Happy Monday. I saw Judy said that it is sunny where she is at, and very jealous of that. We are having a dreary Monday over here, but that's okay. It's all the same when it comes to painting. Oops, I can see my lovely dog hair here. Okay, you guys, I'm just, again, so grateful to have you back for day 5. The palette I mentioned yesterday sold on Amazon is $25, comes in different sizes, very popular. I have the 21 as well. It's awesome. Oh, thank you for letting us know too that you've already tested out the palettes and that you love it. Thank you, Judy, for doing that. I always love getting recommendations on supplies. So if you guys ever find any supplies that you absolutely love, share them in the comments here. And I know others will really appreciate that as well. Just a kind of quick chat about paints. I use this palette just kind of for the odds and ends things, I would say. I actually really, if I am doing a custom portrait, much prefer to use my tube paints here. So Winsor and Newton, I have both the Cotman and the professional grade paints. I like them both. And I then, I'm kind of embarrassed to show you, but have this palette here. Look how messy it is. This would definitely qualify for a wash right about now, but I make it work. So anyways, this is the palette that I use to do a lot of my watercolor work. So I'll just take my tube and then squirt it right into each of these wells. That is also a great thing to have. And you could do the same here. They give you extra spots, but you just need to make sure that you purchase these little individual wells. I don't know if I'll get it out here, but they just snap right on in and it's really easy. Looked at your link on Amazon, asked my husband. Oh, awesome. Look, that's awesome, Jacqueline. Thank you for letting me know. Yeah, they do make great Christmas gifts for art supplies. I always am kind of bummed. So we live in a place that doesn't have any real great art supply store nearby. The closest would be about, I would say, an hour away. So I do a lot of online shopping, but I always think that if I got to go into a Blick art store that I would just go crazy. You do not need the little pans. You can fill the wells in the palette. Yep. Yeah. And so when you start to use these up, you can just go ahead and repurchase the same colors. Sometimes they'll just sell refills of these paints that you just pop right back in, or you can just continue to buy the tube and put it into the exact same well of the color that you have. I personally love the tube paint because they are richer pigments and they last longer, in my opinion. But the travel sets are awesome because you can obviously just quick pack them up, throw them in your bag, and you're good to go. They have some really creative ways in how they create these palettes. I know that there are some other ones too that include the color Payne's Gray. I would recommend that one even more so, just because it's such a handy color to have. Most shopping online, yeah, same here. But if I did get to ever go to a bigger city and go shopping for art supplies, I know it could be quite dangerous. I love the tube paints best. Yep. And you know, there's even another style of paints out there that they're like a liquid watercolor. I can't speak for those. If anybody's ever used those, let me know. I've never tried them, but I know they need to be really diluted. I'd be willing to give those a try too, just to see if I really like the way that they react with my paper. Okay. So again, thank you guys for being here on a Monday. I know this is maybe a tough time for part of our group, but you can always access the replays. All the other ones are there over on my channel. So today what we are doing is painting these rustic bells. So they're gonna lean more in the browns and the tans, and then a little bow to make it like it's hanging. It could be hanging on a wall, this little piece, or it could be hanging on the front of a door. I won't be adding a background to my tutorial today, but you could use your creative imagination to add a backdrop to this if you really wanted to. It could be a solid wash of a color, or you could do, like I mentioned, a zoomed in door, or you could do it against a slatted wall, or barnwood would be really pretty. All right, so let's go ahead and just dive on in and get started here. I always like it when you can see a little bit of my water, so you can see when I'm just gonna back us up a little bit here. If my light will stay. Okay, so today's painting will be using a lot of the yellow ochre and browns, even some burnt siennas. And then you could use really light tints of black, but of course, like I mentioned, the Payne's gray, I love that. You just have to be really careful because when you mix the Payne's gray with the yellows, it tends to lean more green. So making sure we add some brown into that wash too. But first what we'll do is paint the base layers, which is going to be this nice light color here, and then we'll continue to add our texture and darker values on top of that. So let's get our paints nice and activated. Here's my yellow ochre, like I mentioned. But I want to create it to be more of a tan. So to do that, I'm going to add some of my browns. So already I'm getting kind of that muted yellow gold color. Since these are rustic, they're not shiny at all. We want to show that feel to it. So we have our nice rustic brown gold color, and then we can add some Payne's gray to that. So let's just pick up a little bit of blue. Like I mentioned, you could go with the black, and that's going to be another one of our colors that helps to show the depth and the textures, as well as even just doing some browns. We're going to hit it with some browns in areas. And let's see, am I missing anything else as of right now? I don't think so. So let's first do a nice light wash. So mostly water, a little bit of paint on our brush. And we are just going to begin by filling in the bells. And you can even leave a little white of the paper right in there. Don't worry if you don't, because again, like I mentioned, they're not super shiny, but we want to just show that they are a dimensional object. So just dropping that in there right now. And I'm okay with leaving a little bit of spotty texture. So here's my highlight. All right, so while that is still wet, let's grab our brown color here. I'm just using straight brown from my tube, and let's run it along the edges of our bell. And let that play into the wet area we just painted. There's also a little ridge there, and I kind of want to just show that, and one down below here. So again, not controlling where that paint's going quite yet. I'm okay with letting it just kind of move around and play with the water, but leaving that center area lightest. All right, same process, mostly water, a little bit of paint. Let's paint our second bell here. And I will leave a little bit of a lighter highlight on this right-hand side. Let's say the light source is coming in from our right hand, top right-hand side. So I don't want to leave too much there. Something very simple like that. And then again, grabbing our brown and running it kind of right below the ridge, and especially on the left, because that's where it's going to be the most shadowed. But also making a little bit on the right-hand side. I'm not going to worry about mopping up anything right now just because it will dry lighter. All right, let's repeat this process one more time for the bottom bell here. Starting nice and light. I realized I forgot some of our rings, but that's okay, we can do those later. And let's say there's a little highlight right in here. Bring it all the way down. A little bit of brown on my paintbrush. I don't have too much water. But same thing, we'll just kind of run around the edges of our bell and let it work its way in. Now there will be quite the shadow casted from the bell right above, so that piece can be darker. So again, nothing fancy for our base layers, just getting those laid in. So as those dry, let's just add the top of the bell that I forgot about. So just grabbing that nice light golden color, we're just going to paint in the top of the bell, just so we can get that to dry. So real quick, nothing's fancy here. We'll just kind of make a little circle. All right. Looking good. I am going to leave our red bow for the last thing we do. So still going to work on the bells. And now needing to show a little more rougher texture to these rustic bells. So for me, I'm grabbing the Payne's Gray. Like I mentioned, you could do that with black, but very, very little bit of that color. We don't want it too stark. And I'm just going to mix it up with some of my brown colors here. Just going to give me that really nice gray. It's not too dark, just a, about a medium amount on my brush. So things should have dried a little bit. Some of it might still be wet, and that's okay. We'll still kind of go with the effect that the wet on wet technique gives us. So I'll just first begin with the very pointed tip on my brush, and almost like I'm drawing a little line there and down on the edge of the bell. So mine did dry quite a bit because you can see it's not running anywhere. So we'll just help to outline some of these little areas. And again, the lip on our bell. Can even do one where the little ring is. So I'll just do a little bit like that. So we will add more shading, but right now I'm just outlining in those areas right here. So grabbing just water and dabbing my paper towel, I have a very light amount of that grayish blue color on my brush. And this is where I'll start to kind of, like we did yesterday with the poinsettia leaves, and just begin to kind of bring some of that shading into the actual bell itself. And I don't want to go too crazy with that right away. So I'll just do a little bit. And if you need to, just get a completely clean, somewhat dry brush, and we can even take some of those areas and smooth them into the bell again. Really depends on if you like the texture you're getting, but I just smoothed mine in a little bit more. Okay, we'll go ahead and do that again. I never seem to mix up enough paint, so sometimes I just have to keep mixing up for each of the bells. And our shadows are going to be playing on this side. So I'll run a line down and across the top. I'm not sure I got that as dark as I would have wanted to, so I'll just add a little more paint. And then run along the bottom lip of this bell. I'll even add some to the back of the ring. So this is all I have for that one right now. But again, picking up water, dabbing it on my paper towel, I'll help to blend some of that back into the bell. And you can do a few little speckles because, again, rustic bells have all those scuff marks. They're tarnishing. So we want to give that same illusion. And for our last little bell, grabbing the Payne's Gray, mixing it with my brown, and we are going to have a nice little shadowed area right below where that bell is, kind of casting a shadow. And then again on this left-hand side, so there are my outlines, grabbing more water and smoothing it into the bell. I just love the way that all the different tans and browns and now these blue colors are all just layering and playing together. Add a little bit into the ring up top here. So once those dry a little more, that's when we'll give those final details and paint our little bell insert here. But let's let that dry because mine is still pretty wet. And with the same colors, really, I'll mix the brown and yellow ochre back together to get my light tan. This is the color we'll use for the rope that they're hanging on. So I have a decent amount of paint to water on my brush, but I'm going to use the very fine tip since it's so skinny. And we are going to paint kind of little side C's, backward C's, I would call it. And we're just going to start to outline how the little rope And then I'm just gonna run one kind of down the left-hand side so I can see an outline there. I'm gonna leave a little bit of white of the paper. And this is a knot, so you can just go ahead and fill that in. With a 5x7 painting, it's kind of hard to get the exact details. Just do the best you can. So this is what I have for the rope so far, just a little bit of an outline with white in between. Do the same for this rope going down again. Just doing little C lines, and then I'll run one down the side. Filling in my little knot. And then this one behind gets kind of hidden. So it definitely will be darker. Just our little lines there. And then filling in the rope at the bottom. And you might find it easier to switch to a smaller brush. And I'm just going to pick up the slightest amount of paint that we were just using and going to run a little bit of that wash in areas that it's going to be the darkest. So that would be right where it attaches to the bow, right underneath that one there. And this will be the base layer for our rope. We'll go back and outline and define areas. But for now, just trying to wait it out for our bells here to dry. Mine actually feel good. Hopefully yours are about the same place as mine for drying. And what I'll do now is start to outline the areas that need to be darker. And because it'll be the wet on dry technique, I'll be able to control exactly where that paint is going. So let's do that with adding in the richer brown again. And we can add a little bit of darkness to that. So I'll just add a little Payne's gray just to make it a bit of a darker brown, or your black. But again, don't need a lot. Something like that. So now you can kind of see my original brown to now the darker shade that I just created. Okay, so now this is where we bring in those details. With the very fine tip of my brush, I'm just going to run a detail line there and right above. Do one for the ring. And then another one that runs down. And then some that run along the edges there of the bell. All right, so that's quite the outline. If you wanted to soften that, same technique where we get rid of the paint on our brush, just get a little bit of a damp brush, and we can soften it simply by rubbing it and blending it in. But we don't want to lose too much of the dark color there. So I'm casting the shadow, or I'm painting the shadow on the right-hand side because even though the light source is coming here, it's getting shadowed by our rope. And it probably wouldn't hurt to add a little more shadow if you lost yours like me to the left-hand side here, because again, it's a rounded object, so it's got to come back around and have some shadows to it. This is also a really great time to use that darker brown color. Since this piece inside is going to be so dark, we can just go ahead and paint that in. Okay, more outlining for the second one now. Let's begin by doing that little ridge. Nice thin line there, and right above on the left-hand side of our bell, and working our way down. This one I'm definitely going to blend in. And then do some up top there and right below. And I realize that we need to show kind of the underbelly of this bell. So that could be a good thing to do now too. So I am just going to, I don't have it in the outline, but very carefully run it right along like a little half moon there. I'll probably add more Payne's Gray to my under part just to make it darker. But I forgot to add that in on our outline to make it look dimensional. So let's add just a little bit more on this side. This is what I have right now. Get a clean brush and pull some of that outline into the inside of our bell here. On the left-hand side and a little on the right-hand side. I'm going to keep this little lip here nice and light. I love that contrast it creates from the top to the under part of the bell. Can even take sometimes whatever you have left over on your brush and just do a few speckles in a few areas. If you don't like them, you can use your finger to kind of push them into the paper, just like that. So as you can see, what that final outline is helping to create the dimension compared to our last bell that hasn't had that quite yet. So let's add a little bit more to the bottom one. And oops, I think I forgot my little ring up top. Let's go back to our second bell and just add a little line like that. Okay, back to our third bell now, and going to do a nice little thin line there. And then the side will be where it is darker because of the bell shadow. And then our ring, the back side of our ring. And I also like to do like a little line on the front side of the ring. Bringing that down. And then across there. Now we'll just start to blend some around. Mine looks like it could get even darker, so in some areas, so I'll just make some more of that paint quick. I want to run it right along the bottom edge. And right there. I'll grab kind of a medium brown color. I forgot to paint the inside. So let's do that one on the bottom. And then carefully doing the one that we just did to not get this part to blend too much into it. But here are our pretty rustic bells. And what I love most is how this layer of the bluish gray color plays with these warm golden colors. I think that's always such a pretty coloring, especially to create a rustic look. Okay, so now we are getting close, but I need to now add details into my rope. So I'm going to try and switch to a smaller brush. And this is where I'll grab that same darker grayish brown color that I keep creating for the bell outline. So I have Payne's Gray and Brown. And we are going to create those same C shapes right on top of what we had just done. But this is going to help really give the definition, illusion of a rope. I'll do some on the left-hand side as we work our way down. And just kind of outline your knot in a way that it looks like it's hooked on. And again, we'll do the same thing. I forgot I gotta do my C first. Here we go. We want to make sure we get that left-hand side. Okay. One more area. This is going to be shadowed. And then our knot, which I'm just running those outlines right along the outline on my paper. So we can add dimension to the rope one more time, but let's let those outlines dry first. And then when we go to add the brown to help shadow some of those areas, it's going to layer as a transparency layer right on top of those lines that we created without losing them. So let's switch gears now to a familiar but new color for today, which would be the red. Now you don't have to make it a red bow. You could make it a green. I've seen people use pink a lot now with Christmas, so that's always a fun color. You could try that too, but I'm gonna do mine the traditional red. So getting that nice mixed up here, and I'll add a little orange. So I have a decent amount of paint on my brush. So the trick will be to make sure that we start in some of the darkest areas of the bow when you have so much paint on your brush. So that would be kind of right underneath the knot as I work my way down this strand, like that. You can add another little bit of that on the right-hand side here. And then I don't want to carry that much paint down, so I'll just get rid of some of that paint on my brush. And that's where I will begin to pull it down. And I want to do my best to kind of leave in some white areas. So let's say it's a satin bow, it's going to reflect some highlights in there. So let's leave one down the middle. I'll just continue to run my brush. Now I've run out of paint, so I'll pick some more up, drop it in some of that area, and run it back down again. This is a nice thin, skinny ribbon. And I'll outline the other side like that and fill in the bottom. But I am going to leave that little bit of white kind of on the middle left-hand side. Mix up some more of that same color. And let's do the same, bringing that down along the left-hand side. And bring it all the way down. Then let's get rid of the paint. I want a nice shine on this ribbon. So I'll just do a line on the other side there. And let's leave our shine kind of right in there. So that's what I have. It's kind of that first little layer there. Pick up more of that red. And this is where we can drop it in. Into some of those areas to make it a little darker. I would also like to make this part darker. I'm just going to run a little bit more. Okay. So for our bow here, same idea, mixing up our red, or kind of our base red that we like. A medium amount on my brush. We'll start towards the knot on both the front and the back side here. And then I'll get rid of that paint on my brush and we can smooth that out here. And then this side is going to be darker, which I'll add a darker color to, and this part will have that nice shine. If you need to grab more red, just drop it in, because I pulled that color out too far where it just soaked it right up. Okay, for our other side of the bow, more of the red. And let's start with the back side. That is definitely going to be the darkest, so I can go ahead and just lay in a good amount of paint back there. And then I suggest getting rid of a lot of paint on your brush by dabbing your paper towel and adding a little water. And very carefully, we will add some little red color there, and then I'm going to leave a little highlight on the right hand side. And then the knot is going to get just a little bit of paint. And it'll definitely be the darkest on the sides of the knot. Okay, looking good. So we could leave the bow as is like that, or you could go back through and add, what I'm going to do is do the Payne's gray mixed with my red to create that nice deep burgundy color, and that'll be what I use to create the shadows in the bow. So if you have the ability to mix up your burgundy red, we'll use that sparingly. So kind of right where the center of the knot meets this long tail of the bow, we'll just add a little bit of darkness there. Same with this one on this side. And depending on how your bow is doing for the amount of water that you have, you may need to wait a little bit, but I'm gonna run this dark color right along that back side there. And I'll hit it right there where the bow meets the center of the knot. And we could even bring some of that color down along the left-hand side of the tail in areas. I just like the way that it gives one more active color to our red bow. So it's not just one color of red. Might even look nice if we just added one little outline, dark outline to the top here. There we go. Okay, so depending on how your bell's dried, you may want to go back through and add in just yet one more outline and hit certain areas, such as down here where it's the darkest. So I'm just taking that dark color and hitting some of those extremely shadowed dark areas like that. And especially underneath this bell here on the inside. This is where you get to kind of just take a step back and see if there's any areas that just need a little more depth and refinement. But otherwise, I think that does it for today's rustic bells. You can even take a slight amount of that same grayish color and just run it where the rope connects in certain areas to help create a little depth. Now, I hope you guys have some creative fun if you have more time to paint today and can kind of show what this could be hanging on against. Maybe it is just a white wall and it's just this cute little, nail that this uh, bells and ribbon are hanging on. So I'm excited to see what you guys all come up with. Please continue to tag me at Windswept Design Studio on Instagram or send me a DM on Instagram, a direct message with a picture of your painting because I am keeping track of everybody who is submitting and participating. And again, if you partake in every day of the challenge, you'll be put into a drawing to win the Master Watercolor Dog Breeds course, which is a really, really cool prize. So please do keep painting and posting, and I'm very excited to see what you guys all do today. And I will see you back here again tomorrow for day 6, which means that we will be halfway done. Okay, have a great rest of your Monday.